If you enjoy stepping into the past, remember to like and subscribe. Now, tell me, who should travel next, and in what year? The sharp, pungent scent of wet earth laced with smoldering wood smoke curls into your senses as you open your eyes to the faint light of dawn over Kyoto. The city hums quietly, a mix of wooden rooftops shedding last night's rain and nearby cherry blossoms dripping with heavy droplets. The air feels thick, humid yet fresh, promising both renewal and unease. You inhale, tasting the mist that clings to the narrow streets, where lanterns still flicker in front of wooden shops and samurai residences. You are Hana, 31 years old, a human resources manager, summoned inexplicably from your time into this sprawling, hierarchical world of feudal Japan. Precisely in the year 1600, Kyoto, poised beneath the shadow of the Tokugawa clan's rise after the Battle of Sekigahara, is a place both alive with cautious hope and choked by strict order. The shifting alliances weigh heavily on everyone, yet your mind fixates on a far different battlefield: the management of people. The first morning dawns hectic. Your modern sensibilities summon efficiency and fairness in a culture where rank dictates every word, every breath. The samurai's rigid caste system feels suffocating. Ancient customs are walls you have no reference to scale. Still, brilliantly practical instincts honed in corporate buildings instinctively parse the environment. You notice the overlord's personal guard squabbling over roles assignments unclear, frustrations simmering beneath the stoic surface. You start to sketch an organizational chart in your mind, overlaying your knowledge of workflow and clear reporting lines. It's fragile, the adjustment. Your ideas about equity sound strange to them. How could people of lower status question their place? Yet, by offering respectful suggestions to your Lord's steward, you gently apply what you know. Transparency cuts gossip, fairness breeds loyalty, and morale holds armies and artisans alike. For the first time here, someone dares to ask, who deserves a holiday? You mentally note how, even in feudal times, human nature craves dignity. Practical tools help. A small notebook you clutch, strange markings and symbols akin to your world's timesheets, becomes both diary and ledger. Each day, observations and minor successes stack like stones toward trust. You find that respect works neither by decree nor command, but through proof temperance in speech and consistent fairness in treatment. Evenings bring walks through Kyoto's lantern-lit streets. Rain softens, and the distant river sings its ancient song. You feel the coarse texture of wood under your palm as you lean against a bridge railing. Eyes tracing narrowing shadows of samurai passing by, silent but watchful. The scent of roasted rice and steamed fish drifts from market stalls, reminders of humanity's daily rhythms beneath grand history. Your mind spins with contrasts, the disciplined hierarchy clashing with your ideals, the subtle negotiation between old and new. You recognize your own impatience as a luxury here. Slowly, days stretch into routine, the pulse of feudal life syncing with your heartbeat. The complexity of managing people unfolds beyond charts and policies. It becomes about reading silence, deflecting fears, nurturing hope where it barely glimmers. By the week's end, fatigue sets deeper than muscle tiredness. It presses on your spirit, a strange mix of relief and anxiety. You think about survival, not just your own, but the survival of an idea, that fairness and respect might seep into even the oldest traditions, slowly, like rain soaking the thirsty ground. Not every change demands a shout. Some move through shadows and whispers, waiting patiently for their time. Presses in on you as you weave cautiously through the chaotic crowd. This isn't just a bazaar, it's a battleground of status and survival. And you are an outsider trying to find footing in a world bound tightly by rank and ritual. Hana feels the uneven cobblestones beneath her sandals, the gritty dust that clings to her damp skin. She senses the eyes of merchants, foot soldiers, and samurai alike, sharp and assessing, like the very blades they carry. The last week's attempts at organizational reform ripple in her mind. You can see how the samurai's rigid codes shape every interaction here. Respect flows differently. The lowest vendor bows, not just out of politeness, but with the weight of survival. No room for error. Her modern experience gives her a unique lens. She observes tensions between samurai retainers, their pride bruised by underpaid tasks and uncertain futures in this post-Sekigahara piece. Applying her HR instincts, she notes supply chain inefficiencies, artisans hoarding materials, duplicated roles, unclear duties causing friction. Her skill in conflict resolution drives her to propose small shifts, a clearer system for task assignment, a suggestion box in the form of a discrete wooden tablet for grievances. These gestures feel radical. She watches as the stewards of these households react, some skeptical, others curious. Her insistence on fairness nudges conversations about merit, challenging the age-old norm that loyalty must weigh more than ability. It's a slow trickle, barely a ripple in the river of centuries-old tradition. At midday, under the glare of the sun, Hana leans against a carved wooden post near a steamed mochi stall. The sticky sweetness mingles with simmering broths, and the acrid howl of sharpened blade strikes nearby. The sounds overlap a distant war drum, the chatter of townsfolk, the crisp asterisk clink asterisk of armor being adjusted for parade or patrol. Here in Kyoto during this fragile peace, the remnants of battle still shape daily life. People move with the shadow of conflict etched into their steps. You feel the sweat purling on your forehead, the roughness of your linen sleeve against your cheek. The lessons of modern HR clash with the tough reality. The samurai hold power through blood and warfare, not memos or meetings. Yet, Hana's engineering mind frames problems distinctly. Workflow is workflow, whether on a factory floor or a feudal estate. She begins sketching a prototype for a simplified personnel ledger using rice paper scraps, hoping it will bring clarity and reduce disputes over supply and labor. It's an alien concept here to quantify work with anything beyond honor and obligation. But she senses the faint interest of a few progressive aides. As dusk dims the sky, the marketplace thins. Lantern light flickers, casting shadows that stretch long and thin. The odors of roasted chestnuts and smoky pine envelopes the cooling air. Hana stretches tired limbs and feels a peculiar kind of exhaustion, not just physical, but of threading new patterns through dense, old cloth. Her thoughts drift to the paradox of change in a world painstakingly built to resist it. She wonders if fairness, like the clang of armor, can become a rhythm people accept, or if it will remain a faint, outsider's melody. Sometimes survival demands patience, that strange art of planting seeds without expecting to see the flowers bloom. The chill seeps through her simple kimono sleeves, reminding her that this world demands more than just understanding. It demands adjustment. The week unfolds inside these tatami chambers of a samurai household, a place where honor and hierarchy are carved into every gesture, every breath. Hana, the modern HR manager out of time, tries to translate her knowledge of people and productivity into a language dominated by ancient codes of duty and deference. Each morning, she presides over meetings conducted in silence and layered courtesy, where speaking out of turn risks offense equal to failure. Her fingers trace the edges of a wooden box, holding thin slips of paper attendance records she has painstakingly introduced. It's a small innovation, but powerful. Keeping track of who comes and goes, who performs tasks day by day, brings a clarity that the samurai find unsettling, yet ultimately useful. She notes the hesitation of retainers and servants alike, who weigh the risks of transparency against the hope for recognition. The rigid social structure offers little room for error, yet Hana's quiet persistence begins to plant the idea that fairness might be measured as well as assumed. The week's rituals seep into her bones, the routine cleaning of the parlor screens, the measured folding of scrolls, and the delicate pacing of tea preparation. She senses that even in these tranquil practices, there is a current of tension, a reminder that this piece is fresh and fragile after decades of war. News from distant provinces speaks of rebellions flaring quietly, and rumors of plague stir whispers in the shadows. Underneath the calm, the tremors of uncertainty thread through every household. Her HR instincts pull her toward problem solving beyond paperwork. She watches the subtle signs, a younger samurai's guarded frustration beneath his formal facade, a servant's quiet exhaustion that threatens to slip into neglect. Using her experience, she suggests incremental normalizations, otherwise unheard of small breaks, shared tasks to foster esprit de corps. It's a careful dance, balancing respect for tradition without appearing disruptive. At night, the faint scent of pine smoke drifts through sliding doors, mingling with the humid earthiness of the tatami. Hana sits near the glowing paper lanterns, fatigue settling deep into her limbs. The stillness encourages reflection. She understands that this is not just about changing systems, but about navigating time itself, an intricate weaving of old and new, where progress feels painfully slow and subtle. She realizes that in a place so governed by rank and birth, her modern ideals sparkle like embers in the dark fragile, easily extinguished, yet stubbornly persistent. She wonders, not for the first time this week, whether change in such a world will come like a sudden storm or the barely perceptible shift of seasons. For now, all she can do is brace against the chill, accept the roughness beneath her knees, and keep folding the fragile paper of possibility. The sharp of thin rice gruel lingers on Hana's tongue, blending oddly with the warm crackle of the fire beside her. The low orange glow casts flickering shadows on the rough wooden walls of the servants' quarters, where she has come to share a modest meal after a long day. The smoke curls upward, stirring the air with faint scents of burning pine and charred grain husks. Outside, the season declares itself with a sudden chill, reminding her how distant this world is from the climate-controlled comfort she once took for granted. This week, Hana has begun to see the subtle power of small comforts in a life ruled by hierarchy and discipline. Mealtime simple, austere, often the same pale gruel become moments where human needs pierce the armor of obligation. In a culture where samurai valor overshadows all, what she brings from her modern understanding is a quiet insistence on empathy within structure. She has proposed small breaks for workers, moments to refill water, and a rotating schedule that avoids exhaustion ideas that feel both revolutionary and fragile. Her expertise in human resources shapes every interaction more than she expected. The tasks she manages aren't just about efficiency. They're about trust, crucial in a time when loyalty is enforced as much by fear as by honor. She carefully notes patterns: who volunteers, who shrinks away, who waits for orders. She experiments with assigning tasks not solely by rank, but based on aptitude, using her observation and reasoning to gently nudge senior retainers and servants toward a new understanding of merit. Kyoto hums with the uneasy peace that follows the Battle of Sekigahara. Guards tighten their watchfulness. Rumors swirl of unrest in distant domains, and the plague's faint echo leaves some houses deserted. In this time, where illness and war can unsettle order overnight, Hana's insistence on clear, fair roles isn't just ergonomic, it's survival. Her plans sometimes clash with rigid samurai pride, yet her modern logic slowly persuades hesitant onlookers that fairness yields not weakness but strength. Late afternoons pass with exchange and negotiation, balancing respect for ancient customs and quiet rebellion against stagnation. The crackle of hearth fires accompanies the ritual cleaning of weapons and the careful folding of silk banners, underscoring how practicality and ceremony coexist. Hana feels the rough fabric of her worn kimono scrape against her arms as she traces charts and records by candlelight. The flickering flame struggling against creeping shadows. Her makeshift notebooks, filled with meticulous observations, become instruments of incremental change. She senses growing wariness from elders, a reminder that every innovation here must earn trust slowly, like the turning of seasons. Yet even those skeptical nod at the improvements. Fewer conflicts erupt over duty confusion. More workers feel seen. The taste of thin gruel, once merely sustenance, begins to symbolize endurance bitter, modest, necessary. As dusk deepens, Hana leans closer to the fire, the heat seeping into her chilled bones. Fatigue settles not just in her limbs, but in her mind, tangled in the endless puzzle of bridging worlds. She reflects on the delicate balance between ambition and patience, recognizing that change here moves at the pace of flickering flames, sometimes threatening to vanish, yet always ready to kindle anew. The day's labor weighs on her, but beneath that weariness lies something quieter, stronger. The slow forging of hope, drawn from resilience as ordinary as the bitter gruel she tastes. The faint, clipped sounds of foreign words catch Hana's ear, swallowed quickly by the low murmur of Kyoto's vibrant streets. The scent of unwashed linen mixes with the sharp tang of fish markets, and the faint smoke drifting from charcoal braziers as she weaves carefully between vendors, samurai, and commoners. The city pulses with frenetic energy, merchants shouting their wares, sandals scraping on dirt roads, and the occasional click of wooden clogs on stone. The air vibrates with languages that twist and turn, some familiar, others alien, a reminder that this era, even in its ancient rituals, is touched by distant worlds. This is Hana's 5th week in 1600s Kyoto, navigating the rigid samurai hierarchy while carrying the tools of a modern HR manager in an age of swords and silk. Her ears strain to grasp the murmurs of Portuguese traders foreigners who arrive with goods and ideas. Their different customs, raising wary eyebrows among samurai and merchants alike. The presence of these outsiders unsettles the fragile order here, and Hana senses it, even as she tries to understand where her own modern notions might fit. Her professional instincts press her to decipher the chaos, the interplay of influence and power among the local lords, the merchants who operate within and around the samurai caste system, and these enigmatic foreigners who bring promises of silk, firearms, and ships. She observes how people respond, with suspicion or curiosity, arching eyebrows or discreet glances. Her attempts to introduce fairness in duties sometimes clash against the unyielding walls of status. And here, those walls seem woven tighter by fear of outside disruption. Hana's background in human resources equips her with an understanding of communication's nuanced role, the way words build trust or undermine it. She begins experimenting with clearer, simpler methods of conveying instructions, mindful of language barriers and hierarchy. She marks who can read and write, and introduces pictorial notices for daily tasks. A small but strategic innovation in a world where literacy is uneven and status so often outweighs practicality. The foreign traders bring more than goods. They bring rumors of the wider world beyond Kyoto's walls, the clashes of distant warlords, the new technologies that have started to shift the battlefield since Sekigahara. Firearms, once rare curiosities, now pepper conversations with cautious hope and fear. Hana notes how these developments unsettle the older samurai, making her proposals for merit-based assignments feel simultaneously urgent and more difficult. Evenings find her at the edge of the city, where shadows lengthen and the sense of cooking fires mingle with pine smoke and the faint saltiness from the nearby river. She runs fingers over the new task charts pinned in the Lord's household, aware of the delicate balancing act, honoring this culture's reverence for order while nudging it toward fairness. The slightly alien feel of this responsibility presses on her modern assumptions, often a double-edged sword, illuminating solutions, but risking offense. Fatigue creeps deep tonight, a weariness that comes from constant negotiation not of swords or politics, but of expectations and human nature itself. The whispers of foreign tongues fade into passing winds, but their presence lingers, like a promise and a warning both. Hana wonders how to build bridges in a world that resists change as fiercely as it has survived centuries of upheaval. She reflects on the truth beneath her exhaustion, that progress here will be less a leap than a long, twisting path Each new word learned, each small misunderstanding resolved, a step toward a future none can yet foresee. The city hums on, alive with confusion and potential, and she moves with it as best she can. The steady rhythm of chisels and saws slices through the crisp morning air, punctuated by the occasional sharp scent of freshly cut cedar. Hana's hands feel the rough texture of wood shavings as they gather at her feet, while the buzz of curious voices and cautious glances from nearby carpenters hums around her. The ancient workshop in Kyoto breathes with a familiar pulse stools striking timber with precision, the smell of pine resin, and the undercurrent of sweat and earthiness mixing with oil lamps and distant market noises. This week shifts for Hana from parchment and ink to hands-on labor beside craftspeople as she steps into early carpentry tasks. The samurai households depend on skilled artisans to maintain their estates, and the intricate wooden joinery, crafted without nails, fascinates her engineering mind. Watching the carpenter's work reveals a tacit hierarchy, not just in rank, but in mastery passed down through generations, guarded and revered. Her modern skills in organization and workflow intersect awkwardly, yet intriguingly here. She analyzes the sequence of tasks, spotting moments where labor overlaps inefficiently or tools lie idle. Drawing from her experience, she introduces a simple system, grouping workers by skill and task rather than by age or status alone, a move foreign to the strict feudal order. The senior carpenters eye this proposal with skepticism, their practiced eyes wary of change, but also a spark of interest. Some younger apprentices look up to her quietly, their expressions a mix of hope and uncertainty. Hana's attempts at workplace equality ripple through more than just task assignments. She observes the subtle tensions between seasoned craftsmen and junior workers, noting that respect here is earned not by title, but by sweat and patience. Her HR strategies begin to focus on conflict resolution and communication, a balance of deference and openness. Introducing short, shared breaks fosters camaraderie, softening the rigid lines drawn by centuries of hierarchy. Outside the workshop, Kyoto teems with the aftermath of the Tokugawa consolidation. The city hums under the watchful eyes of samurai patrols, and the rumor of technological advances European clocks arquebuses feels both distant and close. The carpentry reflects this tension. Traditional methods hold sway, but hints of innovation flicker in new tools introduced quietly or in faster techniques discussed in shadowed corners. The sun climbs higher, warming the air and bringing sharp relief to the scent of sawdust and pine. Hana rolls up her sleeves, feeling the grit beneath her nails, the vibration of a plane smoothing wood grain, the cool handle of a chisel. She senses how different this is from the world of offices and screens, a physical, tactile reality where progress is measured in fit joints and steady hands. At day's end, when the populace dwindles and lanterns flicker awake, she sits quietly on a rough-hewn bench, muscles aching, yet mind alert. The week's work teaches her anew that adaptation is as much about connecting with bodies and tools as it is with ideas and words. Change, slow and deliberate, like the crafting of a temple beam, requires respect for tradition, even while reshaping it. Her thoughts drift toward the paradox of time and effort, how lasting structures need both solid foundations and daring hands willing to carve new paths. Hana feels the pull of both, poised between eras, her own future uncertain, but shaped by the rhythm of wood and tool she now understands more deeply. The sense and yields thick at first, then thinning as the bristles spread and pull. She tastes the faint bitterness of the ink on her lips, a reminder how fragile this art is, a balance of pressure, grace, and control. Around her, the low murmur of attentive pupils blends with the scratch of animal hair brushes on delicate paper. It is early spring in Kyoto, and outside the softly falling rain muffles the hum of daily life. This week unfolds with Hana immersing herself in the discipline of calligraphy. Far from the spreadsheets and meetings she once mastered, here in the quiet study rooms of the samurai residence, mastery of the brush signifies more than skill. It represents cultural authority, education, and social standing. For a woman, an outsider carrying foreign notions of workplace equality, the lessons are as much about patience as ink. Her modern training in human resources positions her uniquely. She senses patterns in the class, who grasps the flow with ease, who battles the unsteadiness both in brush and spirit. She begins encouraging the samurai-attached scribes and servants to see their practice not just as rote tradition, but as a personal journey toward excellence, recognizing the importance of fostering confidence. She introduces subtle exercises in self-expression, advocating a gentleness uncommon in the rigid hierarchy, small acts allowing apprentices to share ideas or question. Techniques slowly chip away at strict ranks, delicately widening space for trust. Hana's analytical mind draws parallels between calligraphy's delicate strokes and workplace dynamics. Both require balance between control and flexibility, authority and respect. The same careful pressure that guides the brush mirrors the leadership needed to navigate samurai pride and commoner ambition. She experiments with scheduling lessons to include moments of shared reflection, encouraging deeper observation and novel approach that some elders watch with wary curiosity. Beyond the classroom, rumors persist of political unrest and health crises in outlying provinces, whispers that color the mood and remind all of life's precariousness. The family she serves remains vigilant, their position newly cemented after the Tokugawa's victory. Against this backdrop, each brushstroke feels heavier, laden with the weight of cultural survival and shifting loyalties. As dusk deepens, she sits alone by a lantern's soft glow, hands stained faintly with ink, fingers tracing the edges of her earliest attempts. The tactile sensation, the smooth paper, the cool, wet brush grounds her. The slow, meditative process contrasts starkly with her former world's urgency, demanding acceptance of time's steady flow. She reflects on the strangeness of change in this era, how introducing equality is like mastering calligraphy, itself requiring deliberate practice, vulnerability to imperfection, and an enduring respect for ancient forms. Adaptation, she realizes, is less about rewriting the past and more about learning to draw its lines with attentive care. The scroll before her holds not just characters, but the quiet unfolding of possibility, and beneath the surface of every rough stroke lies the patient beginning of transformation. The fingers curl around the warm teacup, its surface smooth and comforting against her skin. The steam rises slowly, carrying whispers of roasted leaves and a subtle earthiness that fills the dim tea house corner where she sits. Outside, Kyoto's narrow streets soak in a gentle drizzle. The scent of wet wood and oil lamps bleeding through the open SHJI panels, creating an intimate cocoon against the chill. This week, Hana finds herself drawn into the delicate dance of tea ceremonies, quiet moments of shared warmth and silent communication, tucked away from the formal rigidity of samurai hierarchy. Here, beneath the low lantern light, the fragile bonds between samurai, servants, and herself, a modern outsider, are slowly woven one measured sip at a time. Her HR background gives her a sharp edge in reading the unspoken language of these gatherings. Each bow, the careful passing of the bowl, the rhythm of inhaling bitterness, embodies power, respect, and subtle negotiation. She senses opportunities to introduce a more equitable flow, not outright rebellion, but gentle reordering of space and voice, by occasionally allowing lower ranked attendants a chance to serve or speak. She sketches the outlines of inclusivity within centuries-old tradition. The meticulous rituals echo the period's delicate balance. In early 1600s Kyoto, the Tokugawa rule solidifies after Sekigahara, yet unease ripples beneath the surface. Epidemics have recently swept through regions, making these moments of calm all the more precious and fraught. The tea room becomes both sanctuary and stage, demanding grace under pressure. Hana experiments with subtle changes, proposing shared tasks that blend social ranks during preparation, encouraging listening more than hierarchy. Her ideas unsettle some elders, but kindle curiosity in younger samurai, quietly questioning their place. She carefully notes the social dynamics, refining her approach in the same way a tea master perfects a bowl's glaze. The aroma of bitter matcha mingles with the faintly sweet scent of incense, wrapping her in focus and presence. She feels the grain of the wooden table beneath her fingers, the delicate weight of tradition pressing against her modern convictions. The tea's warmth spreads slowly, contrasting the cool air and stirring thoughts of belonging and transformation. As dusk deepens and lantern flames dance on paper screens, fatigue edges into her bones, yet the week's shared cups shape fragile bridges, inked not in words, but trust and ceremony. Hana realizes that survival here hinges on small acts of connection, the quiet weaving of respect across invisible divides. She wonders how many moments like these will be needed, how many teacups held and passed before change truly takes root. And if such soft revolution can ripple through iron-bound customs without breaking, the answer remains uncertain. But the warmth lingers, steady and promising beneath Kyoto's shifting shadows. She pulls her arms tighter around her as the dusk fades quickly into a cold, starless night. The soft scrape of wooden sandals on gravel crunches beside her, a low murmur of breathing and shifting armor, the only sounds in the sparse guard post. Her breath clouds in the chill air as she shifts, trying to stay alert through the long hours of watch. The scent of damp earth and pine needles drifts faintly over the wooden stockade where she stands sentinel. This week unfolds not in the comfort of warm rooms or quiet bureaus, but on the front line of feudal responsibility. Her first night on guard, the rigid samurai codes leave little room for hesitation or fatigue. She feels the rough grain of the spear shaft beneath her fingers, the weight, both physical and symbolic. Her modern sensibilities, honed in office towers and structured workdays, clash harshly with the demands of endurance and vigilance under cold skies. Yet her management instincts do not falter. She studies the details, the rotation of shifts, the layering of clothing for warmth, the distribution of duties to avoid exhaustion. Her efforts to introduce fairness and logic meet old customs head-on. The senior guards regard her with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. After all, a woman assuming such a role challenges centuries of tradition. Still, she notices subtle glances from younger soldiers, a hint of respect for her measured calm. Outside the post, news filters in of skirmishes in distant provinces and the slow rebuilding after the Tokugawa victory. The city itself shoulders the tension between peace and lingering unrest. Epidemics linger in whispers, reminding all that survival hangs on constant watchfulness, not just of enemies, but of forces unseen. The night air sharpens every sound, the crunch of footsteps, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird. Hana trains her ears, sharpening awareness in a way her previous life seldom demanded. The cold seeps into her bones, an unyielding tutor of resilience. When weariness presses heavily, she recalls her lessons in empathy and leadership, how endurance thrives not just on discipline, but on mutual support. Her thoughts drift to the layered complexities of this world, where rank commands obedience, but human fatigue demands kindness. She works quietly to build schedules that respect both the need for vigilance and the need for rest. Changes are small but significant. A whispered suggestion for better shared blankets, a nod to staggered breaks, cautious conversations about reducing night shifts where possible. Dawn's first pale light softens the chill and stirs the post awake. Hana exhales slowly, muscles aching yet spirit steadied. She recognizes that survival here is measured in moments, each cold night faced, each concession won, each fragile bond forged amidst harsh duties. The struggle is neither grand nor swift. It is the slow, stubborn practice of standing guard, not just over walls and lands, but over fragile hopes for change beneath a sky that knows neither hurry nor ease. The hands, heavier than she imagined. The scent of oiled iron mingles with faint traces of smoke and sweat. Memories pressed into the very folds of the samurai armor she carefully examines. Around her, the low murmur of the estate fades as her attention narrows to each clasp, rivet, and joint that tells a story not only of warfare, but of discipline and survival. This week, Hana's experience as an HR manager finds a new dimension in this tactile exploration. The armor, both protective shell and symbol of status, embodies the rigid hierarchy that governs her place in this world. She senses the reverence it commands, the fear it inspires among subordinates, and the pride it bestows upon warriors. Her role now demands a delicate balance, to respect these traditions while gently nudging toward fairness and efficiency in a system slow to change. Her modern insights begin to reshape how she views leadership here. She notes how the physical condition of the armor reflects more than battlefield scars. It reveals the support network behind each samurai, the armorers, the retainers, the lesser ranked who maintain these vital pieces. Applying her knowledge, she advocates for recognizing those unseen hands, suggesting structured roles and clear accountability for upkeep and readiness. This idea, simple in her world, challenges centuries of anonymous labor, but gradually earns cautious acceptance. Hana's keen eye catches patterns others overlook. She proposes scheduling maintenance cycles resembling modern preventive care, reducing fatigue and late repairs that risk lives. It's a practical step, grounded in her experience with workforce management. Yet it quietly unsettles established routines where privilege trumps process. The samurai observe her closely, weighing the merits of this outsider's logic. Beyond the armor, the city of Kyoto moves through a subtle transformation. The Tokugawa's rule spread stability, but the fear of rebellion and epidemic shadows every decision. The armor, once a mere tool, becomes a metaphor for the thin line between control and vulnerability. Hana senses the costumes of power are not armor alone, but a complex weave of respect, fear, and expectation. The tactile connection deepens at day's end as she lifts the cuirass once more and feels the embodied history in its weight. She contemplates how change here must respect the past's solidity while carving space for innovation like the perfect fit of armor plates, requiring precision and care. Her thoughts settle on the paradox of her role: to lead without command, to transform without breaking tradition. The fatigue that clings to her bones is nothing new, yet the invisible burden of cultural friction weighs heavier. Still, in this moment, she recognizes that true strength lies not only in iron and leather, but in the patient work of shaping human connections beneath the armor's surface. The are bright, unguarded echoes weaving between stalks and leaves, an unfamiliar sound that feels at once startling and alive. The scent of damp earth mingles with the faint sweetness of cherry blossoms drifting overhead, petals brushing her shoulder as she steps carefully along the narrow path. The sharp tang of fresh spring air wakes her senses, carrying a fragile warmth after long months of austerity. This week, beneath the blooming cherry trees near Kyoto's outskirts, something unexpected takes root: friendship. In a world carved by rigid samurai hierarchies and unwavering customs, these moments stretch the rigid fabric of the past, weaving new connections through shared smiles and quiet understanding. Hanian, HR manager from another, age finds the abstract challenges of workplace equality softened here by the simple humanity of companionship. Her modern instincts urge her to observe closely not just the formal channels of power and obedience, but the informal ties that lubricate daily life. She notices how laughter melts barriers more effectively than any policy, how moments of genuine joy ripple through groups regardless of rank. The playful teasing between a young samurai and his retainer, the cautious warmth between a servant and a low-ranking artisanal speak of undercurrents as vital as any official mandate. Hana begins experimenting with gentle invitations, shared meals beneath blossoming branches, collaborative small tasks turned social moments. Her efforts carry the risk of scandal in this world, where roles are strictly defined and mixing ranks is frowned upon. Yet the rewards speak volumes. A softening of glances, pauses in harsh commands, even murmurs of respect toward those she had thought unreachable. These fragile friendships, nourished like the cherry blossoms themselves, hint at transformation beneath the surface. The influence of her profession becomes evident as she maps interpersonal networks not by title, but by mutual trust and support. She understands that resilient communities depend on these unseen bonds networks, often ignored by rigid structures. Through her subtle guidance, she encourages shared responsibility and empathy, sowing seeds that could one day yield a more balanced culture. Nature's rhythm mirrors her own journey. The cherry blossoms will fade, petals scattering over moss and stone, but the laughter embedded in these groves lingers. The scent of rain-softened wood and fresh blossoms blends with faint smoke from distant hearths, a reminder of life's persistent, quiet renewal amid uncertainty. As the week closes, Hana feels the fatigue of constant negotiation and the exhilaration of connection. She understands, more clearly than before, that progress may not roar like a battle charge, but often blooms in small moments of lightness and shared breath beneath ancient trees. The fragile bonds forged here become a quiet promise that even within harsh traditions, the human heart seeks freedom to laugh, to belong, and to grow. Momentarily over the smooth texture of rice paper, its thin surface delicate beneath her touch. The light flickers, casting shifting shadows on scrolls spread across the low wooden table, carefully inscribed lists. Names weighted with power, lines marking ranks within the shogun's court. The room hums with a subtle intensity. Outside, the soft night carries the occasional distant clatter of footsteps and whispers, all swelling beneath Kyoto's cold night air. In this 12th week, Hana finds herself deepest within the intricate dance of hierarchy and influence. Her role as an outsider with modern HR sensibilities pulls her into a web of names, positions, and alliances that sustain the Tokugawa's fragile order after Sekigahara's decisive battle. Each scroll is not just record, but strategy, an ongoing negotiation of power, favor, and survival. Her keen reasoning turns to the challenge of mapping relationships, invisible yet vital. She traces the tangled threads connecting samurai commanders, courtiers, and castle aides, each link a potential pulse to nurture or a fault line to avoid. Her previous experience with organizational charts guides her hand, but here, those charts hide more than workflow. They cloak centuries of honor-bound rivalry, whispered loyalties, and unspoken rules. The sharp scent of ink is almost overpowering as she sketches new proposals for clarity in duty and recognition. Hana's efforts to introduce fairness meet delicate resistance. Recommendations for transparent role definitions unsettle those accustomed to power wielded through ambiguity and favors. Yet the slow creep of logic piques curiosity among some aides, and scribes her modern approach offers tools to reduce deadly errors in communication. Crucial when trust can mean life or death. Candles sputter as night deepens, the air thick with concentration and faint sweat. Hana's senses absorb every detail: the coarse grain of wooden beams, the stiff rustle of silk robes, the whispered shifting of sandals on tatami. The weight of history presses here. Bureaucracy sustains the samurai beyond the battlefield, and the shadows contain both opportunity and risk. Her reflections settle on the paradox she lives each night in this world where respect is bound by status and fear. How to plant seeds of equity without fracturing the delicate social lattice. The fatigue that presses upon her grows not from labor, but from navigating invisible mines of pride and tradition. As the last candle guttering signals the brink of dawn, she folds delicate scrolls with care, aware that every line traced, every hierarchy plotted, shapes more than governance. They chart the fragile balance of trust and power, sustaining a culture reluctant to change. Hana inhales the fading scent of ink and smoke, feeling the weight of time press gently but insistently. The quiet hours teach her that progress here must be as subtle and deliberate as the faint glow of candlelight, nurtured carefully, lest it be extinguished before it can fully burn. The delicate contrast to the earthy air outside, heavy with the scent of damp moss and ripening rice fields, the kimono's vibrant patterns of autumn leaves and swirling waves shimmer faintly under the dim light filtering through paper screens. Hana feels the intricate weave, the weight of tradition spun into every thread, and the quiet weight of expectation wrapped around her slender frame. This week, her world shifts between the tactile beauty of fabric and the invisible constraints of status. As a modern HR manager out of time, she navigates a society where such silk robes are not mere clothing, but symbols woven tightly into the rigid samurai hierarchy. Each color and motif declares rank, allegiance, and virtue, commanding respect even as it confines. Hana's hands learn both to cherish and question the garment's dual nature. Elegance matched with enclosure, her professional instincts sharpen as she observes how identity and image operate here, not just socially, but in practical labor relations. She begins suggesting subtle reforms, encouraging shared spaces where servants and samurai alike might witness the care in preparing these garments, highlighting artisans often overlooked for their skill and dedication. Her goal is simple but revolutionary: to build recognition where rigid roles obscure human effort. The vibrancy of the fabric contrasts with the harsh realities outside rumors of illness spreading across provinces. The fragile peace held by Tokugawa's rule, and the unspoken anxieties coursing through every household. Hana senses how appearances serve as armor, both shielding and burdening those who wear them. The silk's smoothness feels like a metaphor for her own delicate task, weaving change into tightly held customs without tearing them apart. She watches the gestures, the precise folding and retying of sash, the careful adjustment of collars, and sees in these rituals the echoes of discipline and control echoing through the ranks. Her knowledge of organizational dynamics guides her to foster moments where hierarchy softens, where shared respect replaces silent compliance. It is slow work, measured in glances and slight relaxations. Evenings bring cool drafts that stir the silk, mingling the faint aroma of burning beeswax candles with the distant murmur of festival drums. Hana feels the gentle weight of the kimono press against her skin, a constant reminder that beauty and duty here are inseparable. She reflects quietly on the paradox of thriving within constraints, how survival sometimes depends on mastering the very fabric that binds you. The week closes around her like the folds of the kimono, itself complex, layered, and full of possibility, hidden beneath surface grace. Her fingers linger on the texture, sensing that progress in this world will come not by tearing down, but by weaving patiently, thread by thread, the delicate patterns of respect and change, the subtle warmth of burning incense. Outside, the night is cloaked in wet darkness, the world muted beneath the steady rhythm of droplets striking rooftops and bamboo leaves. Inside, the flicker of an oil lamp casts trembling shadows, the room alive with the faint crackle of flame and the hushed breath of stillness. This week, the chaos of feudal life, the constant demands of hierarchy, status, and survival softens into unexpected moments of peace. Hana, an HR manager transported across time, finds herself learning not only strategies and systems, but also the fragile art of presence. The rain's steady cadence becomes a backdrop to her reflections, a rare pause amid the relentless complexities of Kyoto's samurai courts. Her modern skills bring new perspective to the ancient customs. She applies her understanding of organizational dynamics to foster pockets of calm within the household quiet breaks, shared rituals that temporarily suspend rank, subtle acknowledgments that build trust. These moments are delicate, barely noticeable to outsiders, but powerful for those living within the strict order. She senses tension easing, if only for fleeting breaths. The rain seeps softly into her thoughts, reminding her of the impermanence that shapes this world. The Tokugawa consolidation has brought uneasy peace after decades of warfare. But rumors of rebellion and epidemic linger like shadows beyond the city's walls. In such uncertainty, Hana's push for workplace equality feels both urgent and precarious. The crisp rustle of a silk sleeve against tatami echoes her awareness of boundaries seen, and unseen that govern every interaction. She watches as servants exchange careful glances, samurai adjust postures, and the household settles into a fragile rhythm. Her proposals for fairness, though subtle, begin to ripple beneath the surface, smoothing conflicts and fostering collaboration, even if change moves at the pace of rain's soft descent. As the wet night deepens, Hana feels the weight of exhaustion mingled with cautious hope. The warmth of the lamp and the steady rain become a gentle contrast to the hardness of daily toil and hierarchy. She realizes that survival here depends not only on strategy, but on embracing these quiet interlude spaces where human connection, however fleeting, can take root amid strict tradition. In that dim room, as rain taps its steady song, she breathes in the endurance of time and culture. The fleeting peace, like the rain itself, offers a moment to gather strength, to face the persistent demands of change with patience and care. And she knows that amid chaos, it is these small, soft moments that nourish the slow unfolding of transformation. The feet, her heart beats steady, a quiet rhythm against the stillness of the darkened room, where shadows blend with the pale glow filtering through paper screens. She breathes deeply, feeling the solidity of the moment settle into her muscles, the first true belonging she's known since arriving in this transient time. This week marks a subtle but profound shift. In a world ruled by samurai codes and strict hierarchies, where roles are rigid and trust scarce, Hana senses a fragile thread pulling her in a recognition from others and herself that she now belongs here. However tenuously, her modern experience as an HR manager grants her tools to foster connection and fairness. But it is this shared heartbeat, this unfolding sense of community, that transforms knowledge into survival. She moves among the household with tentative ease-offering guidance on duties and schedules, balancing respect for tradition with quiet advocacy for fairness. The faces around her, once distant or guarded, soften in small ways. A nod, a shared smile, a casual exchange unbound by rank. These gestures become the new fabric of her world, rewoven with threads drawn from patience, empathy, and persistence. Outside, Kyoto breathes with the cautious calm of a city still healing from recent conflict. The Tokugawa's hard-won peace laces every corner with vigilance and hope. Amid this, the household's rhythms pulse steadily, the careful harmony of shared work and ritual offering both purpose and refuge. Hana embraces her role not just as outsider or reformer, but as part of this living mosaic. Her skills sharpen in these interactions, understanding unspoken needs and balancing scarce resources. She begins to map relational dynamics that transcend orders and rank. She experiments cautiously, proposing opportunities that allow those beneath the rigid hierarchy moments to contribute meaningfully, to be seen beyond their station. These initiatives are small sparks, flickering with potential. In the stillness beneath the moonlight, she feels her heartbeat align with the fragile, enduring pulse of this place. The ache of displacement ebbs as belonging seeps in, born not from grand gestures, but from everyday acts forged quietly in shadow and light. As exhaustion settles softly upon her, Hana recognizes a deeper truth, that in the fragility of belonging, in the steady rhythm of shared human connection, lies the resilience needed to endure and to change their world. Thatched wood. Hana's fingers brush the cool stone beneath the dim flicker of lantern light, her breath slow and measured as shadows stretch long along the lacquered screens. The hushed rustle of silk robes echoes softly, a quiet testament to secrets shared and guarded within these walls. The air itself feels heavier here, weighted not just by physical closeness, but by the unspoken truths pressing on her conscience. This week, she finds herself entwined in the opaque labyrinth of court intrigue world, where knowledge is a dangerous burden, and silence often shields both power and peril. The rigid samurai hierarchy enforces a relentless calculus. Loyalty, honor, and obedience balanced precariously against suspicion and fear. Hana's modern sensibilities clash sharply with the suffocating weight of secrets, yet her skills compel her to navigate these currents with care. Her role shifts beyond administration into delicate diplomacy, where every whispered conversation, every carefully chosen word can alter fragile alliances. She applies her understanding of human behavior, her ability to read subtext, to anticipate reactions, to manage loyalties and mitigate tensions, seeking spaces where fairness might exist amid coercion. Yet the burden of concealed knowledge weighs hot and heavy, pressing against her resolve. In these shadowed halls, the echoes of history reverberate more sharply. News spreads cautiously of unrest in distant provinces, the fragile peace after Sekigahara's bloodshed trembling under unseen threats. Epidemics lurk beyond city gates, their specter adding urgency to the veiled negotiations Hana witnesses. She senses that survival depends not only on strength, but on the ability to hold secrets without breaking, and to protect the vulnerable through those silences. Her modern assumption that transparency breeds trust meets resistance. Here, opacity is often law. She wrestles with complicity and conscience, balancing what can be shared and what must remain hidden to safeguard lives and order. The quiet flicker of lantern light illuminates her furrowed brow as she pores over documents, maps, and coded messages, each a fragment of a broader, perilous puzzle. The physical weight of secrecy settles deep within her, a tension she carries beneath every measured step. Yet, beneath the fatigue and doubt, Hana finds a stubborn clarity. That change often moves through the shadows before breaking into dawn. Progress here is not a declaration, but a careful, guarded unfolding. As she retreats to the solitude of her modest chamber, the scent of incense lingers, a bittersweet reminder that in this time and place, knowledge is both a weapon and a shield. The pressure of hidden truths presses hard, but it also sharpens her purpose to weave integrity through the tangled webs of power without losing herself. In the silence, she breathes deeply, steadying the weight within. The night is long, but so is her resolve. The sharp, sour tang of spilled sake lingers in the heavy air, weaving through the faint scent of tatami straw and cedarwood. Hana's nostrils flare as she steps into the narrow hall, the floor slick with dark spots that catch the flicker of oil lamps hanging low. Around her, the low murmurs of cautious voices and the restless shifting of feet thread tightly with an undercurrent of tension thick enough to strip silk from bones. The samurai household in Kyoto holds its breath, caught between expectation and restraint, honor and quiet desperation. This week plunges Hana deeper into the complex fabric of feudal loyalty, where the clear boundaries she once relied on those maps of fairness and equity learned in another age blur into shades of gray. Her modern mind registers each nuance. How power is negotiated not only through rank and tradition, but through subtle alliances, whispered favors, and moments of weakness made visible by too much drink. The rigid samurai world does not welcome disruption lightly, and she feels the heavy cost of pushing even small steps toward workplace equality. As an HR manager thrust into this intricate setting, Hana's skills become less about policies and more about sensing the fragile patterns that sustain order. She watches the body language of samurai, whose faces flush with anger and embarrassment, servants who avoid eye contact, and stewards who balance authority and caution. Her attempts to foster fairness run against unspoken codes, sometimes advancing trust, sometimes breeding suspicion. The spilled sake is a symbol and a signal, marking the fault lines where ethics clash with survival. Hana contemplates the calculated risks of transparency in a world where a single misstep threatens ruin. She draws on her experience with conflict resolution, proposing discreet interventions, a gentle rebalancing of tasks to ease burdens or reassign grievances without inflaming pride. Her modern assumptions about openness challenge centuries of silence and hierarchy. Sometimes they bridge gaps, other times they fracture fragile alliances. Outside, Kyoto hums beneath the heavy mantle of Tokugawa peace, a calm surfaced by vigilance and control. The recent outbreaks of disease add urgency to every decision as households strain to maintain strength against invisible threats. In this charged atmosphere, even the scent of sake carries meaning comfort, escape, but also peril. As night deepens, Hana's senses absorb the subtle shifts. The stiffening posture of a lord walking away, the quiet exchange of glances beneath brimmed hats, the delicate balance of power held in whispered words. She feels the weight of exhaustion pressing beyond body and mind of fatigue, born of navigating invisible lines drawn in blood and tradition. Yet beneath that weight lies a quiet determination. Change here requires patience, humility, and relentless attention, not the blunt force of ideals, but the slow, careful weaving of trust through tangled threads. The smell of spilled sake is a reminder that progress is never pure or neat, but always entangled with risk. Hana closes the night with that thought nestled close, knowing that survival and transformation alike demand embracing the complexity and the discomfort that comes with crossing blurred boundaries. The murmur of whispered arguments mingles with the soft rustle of silk robes beneath swaying lanterns, their muted light casting elongated shadows on polished wooden floors. Hana's gaze shifts through the dim corridor, catching fleeting glances where tension coils beneath practiced restraint. The faint scent of burning pine drifts, mingling with the subtle musk of sweat and incense, creating a charged atmosphere thick as the night itself. The walls seem to pulse with unspoken conflicts, modern ideals of fairness wrestling quietly against the weight of feudal loyalty that binds every movement here. This week, Hana is caught at the crossroads of worlds, navigating a fragile balance where the language of rights and equity often collides with an unyielding code of honor. Her modern understanding of workplace equality clashes sharply with centuries-old hierarchies that prize obedience and lineage over individual merit. Yet her role demands finesse and patience. She listens carefully, interprets subtle cues, and weaves strategies that respect tradition while nudging change forward. She studies the intricate dance of power and submission played out in hushed debate, samurai questioning orders under their breath, stewards balancing loyalty with pragmatism, servants offering cautious counsel. Her HR insight helps her map the social terrain, identifying pivot points where small gestures might reduce conflict or where transparency could build trust. But the path is narrow, and missteps risk unraveling hard-won stability. Kyoto itself seems to hold its breath under Tokugawa rule, a city steady on the edge between peace and suspicion. News of shifting alliances and distant rebellions brushes the periphery of Hana's awareness, a reminder that loyalty here is both armor and chain. Epidemics still haunt the fringes, embedding urgency into every decision, every whispered conversation. The physical sensations punctuate the tension, the rough grain of tatami underfoot, the cool weight of a folded scroll in her hands, the distant clink of armor readied for inspection. Each sensorial detail grounds her amid swirling doubts. Her modern assumptions offer tools for mediation and fairness, yet they also expose fault lines, stirring resistance among those who see her as a threat to the natural order. As the night stretches on, her thoughts settle into a quiet space. The realization that change here is less about revolution and more about delicate negotiation. The whispered arguments beneath lantern light are not just conflicts, but the slow, uncertain birth of new possibilities. Fatigue creeps into her bones, not just from the hours spent in vigilance, but from the weight of wrestling ideals that seem at once too heavy and too vital. Hana senses that survival demands more than strength or strategy. It requires embracing the tension itself, finding balance in contradiction. And in that embrace, she begins to see the faint outline of a future shaped not by breaking tradition, but by carefully threading respect and courage through its seams. Hana feels the coarse scrape of frost-laden grass beneath her wooden sandals, the chill seeping through her thin kimono sleeves like a warning. Cold stares meet hers from figures gathered beneath pale morning light samurai, whose posture weighs heavy with unspoken questions about power and place. The scent of smoke from nearby hearths curls softly under the brittle cold, mixing with the earthy dampness of melting frost on wooden beams and stone steps. This week begins with the unmistakable tension of decisions unsaid, but poised to reshape the fragile balance of authority within the household. The Tokugawa peace demands both strength and subtlety, a rule enforced not only by sword, but by protocol and influence. Hana, armed with the modern insight of an HR manager, steps tentatively into the charged arena where loyalty, obligation, and personal ambition intertwine tightly. Her mind narrates the unfolding scene with sharp clarity, observing how power flows not simply down ranks, but sideways through alliances, favors, and whispered counsel. She notes patterns of deference and defiance, the calculated restraint in speech, and the loaded weight behind every nod. She seeks openings to apply systems of fairness that recognize merit alongside rank, aware that challenging centuries of hierarchy is a perilous task. cold air sharpens her senses, the crisp click of sword hilts, the rustle of silk robes brushing frozen leaves, the measured breathing of warriors gauging her resolve. She uses small gestures, a carefully folded paper, a subtle reordering of duties to shift authority incrementally without provoking outright resistance. Her modern assumptions about clear role definitions and collaborative leadership meet ancient customs where power is as much about perception as permission. Beyond the walls, news travels slowly of uneasy peace stretching over a land still bruised by battle and shadowed by epidemics. The morning's frost reflects a world caught between survival and renewal. Hana feels the metaphor stirring within. Change here is cold and slow, each fragile step weighted by tradition and consequence. Fatigue settles deep, but is tempered by the quiet satisfaction of subtle progress. She recognizes that power is a delicate fabric woven not just in command, but in trust, respect, and shared endurance. The frozen breath, the cold stares, all remind her that belonging requires patience and courage. As the sun edges higher, softening frost into meltwater, Hana breathes steadier, knowing that in this world, influence must be earned, not shouted. The day's decisions may be heavy, but the slow warmth of change begins beneath the brittle surface of dawn. Hana's breath comes steady, but measured, each exhale forming a fleeting mist that vanishes in the cold, stagnant air. The faint scent of sandalwood incense lingers, mixing with the distant chill creeping through sliding paper doors. The house is vast and dim, a labyrinth of quiet spaces pressed into shadow, where every creak carries the weight of secrets too dangerous to share. Tonight, knowledge itself feels like a burden heavy as the lacquered doors she passes, relentless and unforgiving. This week unfolds in these deserted halls, far from the bustling market stalls and open courtyards. Here, away from watchful eyes, Hana wrestles with the cost of the truths she carries and the choices they demand. Having inserted herself into a rigid samurai hierarchy, she faces the brutal reality that knowledge is both power and peril. A double-edged sword wielded carefully, lest it cut too deeply. Her professional instincts trained to optimize workflows, resolve conflict, and nurture fairness now collide with the darker shades of loyalty and survival. She understands that transparency, a cornerstone of modern leadership, is neither welcomed nor safe in this labyrinth of obligation and fear. Instead, she learns to measure every disclosure, weighing the human consequences of silence against the potential chaos of revelation. The rumors of political strife and epidemic seep through Kyoto's walls, shadows in whispered warnings, coloring the fragile peace with tension. In this world, the right choice often conceals as much as it reveals. Hana observes patterns of power-how decisions spread like ripples, how alliances shift under pressure, and how the smallest leak can threaten more than reputations. Her breath steady, fingers tracing the grain of a carved railing. She reflects on the invisible labor of survival. The modern tools of her trade, the charts, the plans, the processes, translate imperfectly into this setting. But her understanding of human nature remains sharp. She navigates the perilous dance of trust and discretion, honoring both the weight of tradition and the imperative for change. Fatigue tugs at her resolve, a slow burn beneath alertness. The night presses in, demanding patience and silence, teaching that some battles are won not with noise, but with quiet endurance. In the stillness of these empty corridors, she comprehends that the heaviest cost is often the burden borne alone, the secret knowledge carried like a shadow that cannot be shared, yet cannot be ignored. As dawn hints at light beyond sliding screens, Hana steadies her breath and shoulders her responsibility again. The choices made in darkness may shape futures unseen, calling for courage defined not by acclaim, but by the quiet strength to bear what few others can. Steps fades through the paper screens, leaving behind a hush punctuated only by the occasional clink of lacquerware and the soft rustling of silk. Change, subtle but unsettling, weaves its way through the familiar walls, bringing with it an awkward blend of pride and guilt. This week confronts Hana with the palpable tension birthed from small disruptions in a rigid samurai hierarchy. Her modern knowledge of human resources and fairness has begun to unsettle time-worn customs, pressing against centuries of unchallenged tradition. The adjustments for better task fairness, shared recognition, and less rigid rank enforcement send ripples through relationships rooted deeply in honor and obligation. She feels the weight of these shifts in every glance sidelong, every cautious word tucked beneath formal etiquette. Some elders grumble softly, their pride wounded by challenges they cannot openly confront. Others nod with hesitant approval, eyes flickering toward new possibilities. The servants observe quietly, sensing the slow stirring of change while weighing loyalty against hope. Hana's strategies, born of organizational logic and empathy, begin to reshape work rhythms and empower voices long overlooked. Yet, every effort carries the risk of fracturing fragile trust, and she moves carefully, balancing progress with respect. She draws from her modern experience to model procedures that integrate hierarchies with inclusion, turning power into a shared resource rather than a fixed possession. Outside, Kyoto breathes in the late autumn chill, the whisper of falling leaves mingling with the scent of wood smoke and distant rain. The fragile peace of the Tokugawa era holds tight, its stability mirrored in the ordered, deliberate motions of samurai rituals and the meticulous care of garden pathways. Hana senses the paradox. Change here is both necessary and feared, an uneasy dance poised between preservation and renewal. Her thoughts wander to the echoes beneath the beams, how moments of disruption ripple unseen beneath the surface, reshaping the house's foundation slowly but irrevocably. She feels the tug of fatigue mingled with determination, the burden of carrying transformation while honoring the past. In the stillness, she acknowledges the quiet, universal truth that every change exacts a price, even when born of kindness and justice. Hana breathes in the mingled scents of cedar and tea, grounding herself in the tenuous balance of pride and guilt, resistance and hope. The journey forward is uncertain, threaded with complexity, but beneath the wooden beams, amid the soft echoes, she senses the first tentative roots of a new order taking hold, and the muffled voices' intense discussion trail through the open doors, shadows flickering against tatami mats and lacquered panels. The room smells of soot and ash, charged with the weight of consequences rippling unseen through fragile alliances. This week, Hana feels the heat of transformation in every breath, as the delicate balance of power in the samurai household strains and shifts. Her presence a woman wielding ideas of fairness and workplace equality stirs more than curiosity. It unsettles old loyalties forged in blood and tradition. The consequences of change, like sparks from the fire, leap unpredictably, igniting conflicts beneath composed surfaces. Her modern skills-keen observation, conflict resolution, structured problem-solving become tools for navigating this volatile terrain. She tracks patterns of trust and tension, noting how rivalries kindle behind formal ceremonies, how whispered doubts spread faster than any official decree. By introducing clearer roles and responsibilities, Hana attempts a steadiness, though she knows balance here is fragile, easily fractured by pride or fear. The air thickens as alliances teeter, and she senses the silent reckoning echoing beyond these walls. The Tokugawa peace, still young and precarious, requires more than force. It demands diplomacy born of humility and courage. Epidemics and rumors of dissent trail through the provinces, infusing every decision with urgency. Hana's breath slows, steadying her amidst the flare of emotions and power plays. The tactile textures, the rough grain of a wooden post, the lingering warmth of a tea bowl anchor her to the present. Her experience reminds her that change is rarely clean or linear. It burns and scars even as it purifies. Fatigue creeps beneath her skin, heavy from the constant vigilance demanded by this dance of alliances. Yet within the heat and smoke, A faint hope smolders small shifts of understanding, moments when rigid hierarchies bend just enough to let in light. She reflects on the paradox. Progress in this world arrives not like a storm, but as embers carried gently on cautious winds. As evening darkens, the smell of iron and smoke settles deeper, wrapping around her like a mantle of responsibility. Hana breathes in, feeling the pull of resilience, knowing that the cost of change is real. But so is its necessity, and that enduring transformation often begins amid ashes and flame. Sharp and crowded, a mix of wood smoke, damp earth, and crushed herbs, mingling with the salty breeze drifting from the nearby river. Her breath catches briefly as she senses how grief and hope interweave in this lively chaos. This week unfolds in the beating heart of Kyoto's markets, where the rigid social order of samurai and servants blurs beneath the daily struggle for survival. As an HR manager displaced from another era, Hana watches the human landscape, faces strained, hands busy, voices sharp and pleading. Her modern skills offer tools to ease burdens and clarify roles. But here the raw emotions, tangled histories, and survival instincts shape every transaction. She notes how moments of despair erupt quietly hidden tears pressed behind steady fronts, whispered regrets traded along with the jostling crowd. The struggle for fairness within hierarchies, especially those enforced by blood, and sword presses heavily on those with least power. Hana senses the cost of her efforts to inject equality. The sleepless nights, the quiet guilt of failing some while helping others, the uncomfortable awareness that progress is neither immediate nor complete. Kyoto, humming under the uneasy peace of Tokugawa rule, thrums with resilience and fragility. The marketplace, a world apart from the nobility's polished halls, breathes with stories of loss and endurance. Epidemics have left shadows in alleys, and every shared moment here holds the weight of uncertain tomorrows. Hana's presence brings slight shifts, a gentler schedule here, a clearer task there. But she knows these are small ripples in vast waters, the tactile jostling of hands exchanging goods, the scratch of wooden carts over stone, the whispered bargaining layered with unspoken hierarchies. All create a living web she must learn to navigate. Her mental maps, built on principles of communication and fairness, must bend around the very human complexities of fear, pride, and hope. As twilight deepens, Hana steps away from the clamorous rows to feel the soft weariness settling in her limbs. She thinks of the quiet sobs obscured by laughter and calls, a sharp reminder that progress is stitched not from grand declarations, but from countless small, imperfect moments. She reflects on the paradox of hope shadowed by regret, and understands that survival in this world means holding both at once. The night air cools, scented faintly with burnt rice and green tea, embracing her as she walks home through narrowing alleys. She knows the journey ahead is long, marked by fits of sorrow and sparks of joy, each essential threads in the fragile fabric of change. As she shifts her hand, the rough bark of a bonsai's aged trunk presses firmly against her palma contrast of textures, soft and rugged, fragile and enduring. The air carries the faint scent of cedar and fresh rain, mingling with the subtle aroma of incense burning steady nearby. This moment embodies the balance she feels pressing on her, that fragile equilibrium between impact and responsibility, growing heavier with each day. Week 24 deepens Hana's understanding of what it means to hold influence in this world. Her modern skills as an HR manager offer tools to foster fairness and clarity. Yet every adjustment resonates through a web of centuries-old rituals and rigid samurai hierarchies. The softness of silk reminds her of the cultural grace that must carry change gently, while the rough bark signals the enduring strength tradition demands. She moves through her role learning to measure her impact carefully, shaping new routines that honor deep-seated customs while urging inclusion where none was once allowed. The delicate handling of interpersonal tensions, the balancing of respect and innovation, echoes in every choice, from reordering task assignments to encouraging shared breaks that subtly shift rigid boundaries. Outside, Kyoto's gardens and courtyards reflect this dance between fragility and strength. The meticulous care lavished on each bonsai mirrors the patience needed to cultivate trust among samurai retainers and household servants alike. Her observations sharpen as she watches how small changes ripple, sometimes smoothing conflicts, other times stirring cautious resistance. Her modern assumptions about teamwork and justice remain both guides and challenges in navigating a world where rank often outweighs reason. The scent of moss and earth, combined with the faint crackle of incense, centers her as she balances the competing demands of tradition and progress. Hana's fingers glide once more over silk and bark, feeling the literal and symbolic textures of her new home, each unique, each requiring care. As the week closes, fatigue presses softly but persistently into her muscles, a quiet reminder that stewardship is a weight as well as a gift. She reflects on the subtle power of gentleness wielded alongside firmness, recognizing that influence grows not in leaps, but in the patient weaving of respect and courage. In this delicate balance of soft fabric and rugged wood, Hana senses the slow but sure unfolding of lasting change, born from the interplay of strength and tenderness, impact and responsibility. resting on her knees, her breath steady, but her thoughts restless. The air carries the faint aroma of sandalwood mixed with the muted scent of damp earth seeping through the sliding doors. Outside, the night is still, but inside the room, the weight of choices, both bright with hope and dark, with consequence presses heavily upon her. The soft rustle of kimono fabric and distant footsteps in the corridor offer a reminder that beneath this fragile light, lives intertwine in complex, often unseen ways. This week draws Hana deeper into the labyrinth of responsibility she never expected. Here, in the heart of a samurai household during the Tokugawa era, every decision ripples far beyond its origin. Her modern experience as an HR manager, the strategies, the reasoning about fairness and efficiency collides headlong with centuries-old customs demanding deference, loyalty, and unyielding hierarchy. The paper walls, thin as they are, hold echoes of whispered arguments, cautious alliances, and the silent burden of regret. She traces the interplay of power and human frailty in these shadows. Small gestures, rearranged duties, discreet acknowledgments, careful listening begin to stretch the rigid fabric of tradition. Yet, with every step forward comes hesitation. With every bright idea, a shadow of risk. Some in the household embrace her subtle reforms cautiously. Others resist, clinging to the known order as a shield from chaos. Outside, the world remains unsettled, epidemics quietly spreading, distant provinces simmering with unrest. Such external pressures amplify the fragility within these walls. Hana senses that each choice she makes shifts not only workflow, but the very fabric of trust. Her modern principles sometimes clash with the realities of feudal obligation, forcing her to balance innovation with respect, boldness with humility. The flickering lamp casts a living mosaic on her hands, a symbol of the constant balancing act she performs. Her fingers brush the cool wood beneath her, grounding her in the present even as her mind weighs the future. Fatigue gathers like a shadow at her edges, a quiet companion to vigilance and hope. As the night stretches onward, Hana reflects on the nature of change in a world built on silence and ceremony. The weight she carries is both burden and privilege, the heavy responsibility of guiding slow transformation without breaking the delicate trust she has earned. In this room of paper and light, she understands that progress is never simple or swift, but a gradual unfolding. One choice, one breath, one flicker at a time. The scent of earth rich and sweet rising beneath the fading sun. The ground beneath their feet is soft with fallen leaves, a patchwork of amber and crimson cushioning each step. This quiet moment, simple and profound, roots her anew in a world where love grows slowly, intertwined with soil and time. This week unfolds differently away from rigid hierarchies and deliberate negotiations toward the tenderness of connection. As an HR manager displaced from a distant future, Hana finds that the heart of survival here lies not only in policies or power, but in trust bred through shared vulnerability. The warmth of that hand in hers is a fragile bridge over centuries of separation and difference, a quiet rebellion against the loneliness of her journey. Her modern understanding of relationships now merges with the rhythms of this land. She learns to read gestures, otherwise unspoken, the careful gaze between a samurai and his retainer, the small kindnesses extended in silence, the way hands become promises in moments that pass without fanfare. The orchard, its fruit heavy and waiting, becomes a metaphor for cultivating patience and hope amid austerity. Daily life in Kyoto hums with the backdrop of Tokugawa's steady grip, the buzz of marketplaces, and the measured sounds of ritual, softened by the rustle of leaves and distant songbirds. Epidemics and political tensions remain close shadows. Yet here in the orchard's sunlit quiet, the urgency yields to endurance. Hana's efforts to foster workplace equality continue in subtle axe-sharing labor, acknowledging unseen contributions, blurring the strict lines that once seemed unbreakable. Her fingers close gently around the rough palm of her companion, strength sharing space with softness. She feels the pulse of shared purpose beneath weathered skin, the silent promise that survival and change are made together. The scent of earth and fruit soothes a stubborn ache within her, the ache of displacement, of longing for belonging. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows through the branches, Hana reflects on the paradox of time here. Change is slow, rooted in daily actions and quiet connection rather than sweeping decrees. The orchard teaches her that love, like justice, demands tending and attentive hands on the fragile growth of something precious and enduring. She breathes in the fading light and warmth, allowing herself the rare stillness of hope. In this week of golden hues and held hands, she discovers that the strongest foundations grow not from power or rules, but from the simple, steady trust rooted deep in shared soil. Murmurs of whispered confessions beneath the fading light of dusk. Hana senses the fragile intimacy of the moment, the mingled warmth of breath, carried quietly between trusted voices, the subtle tension wrapped in every careful word exchanged. The stone path beneath her feet feels rough against her weary soles, a grounding contrast to the ephemeral sweetness of blossoms tilting on slender branches overhead. The air grows cooler, laced faintly with incense, and the distant undertone of wood smoke curling from hearth fires settling in for the night. This week, Hana moves deeper into the unseen networks of trust and vulnerability that thread beneath Kyoto's rigid samurai order. Her modern expertise in human resources guides her, not through edicts or reforms, but through careful listening, gentle encouragement, and the building of fragile bridges. She observes how, even in a world structured by stern hierarchy, the soft confessions shared beneath plum blossoms become acts of courage, a glimpse of resilience in places often defined by silence and duty. The challenge she faces is a balancing act, honoring tradition while nurturing openness, weaving fairness into a fabric that prizes loyalty above all else. She applies her knowledge to foster moments where servants and samurai alike find their voices, whether in shared tasks, subtle acknowledgments, or unexpected collaborations. These acts ripple quietly, creating new pathways for cooperation that defy the strict social codes without breaking them. Outside, the season whispers of renewal, even as memories of recent conflicts and epidemics linger. The Tokugawa regime's fragile peace hangs in the air, echoing in restrained celebrations, and the mindful tending of gardens like the plum orchard where Hana walks. She feels the weight of history in each petal's fall, a reminder that change is gradual and must be nurtured with patience and care. Her fingers brush lightly along the rough bark of a nearby tree, grounding her as she reflects on the paradoxical beauty of these moments, delicate yet rooted, fleeting yet enduring. Each whispered secret, each shared hope carries the weight of risk, yet also the promise of transformation. Hana understands that progress here is less about bold declarations and more about the slow, quiet forging of trust beneath open skies. As dusk deepens into night, she breathes deeply the mingled scents of plum and incense, feeling fatigue settle gently, but a resolute hope rise within. The journey is far from over, but in the soft light of these shared moments, Hana senses the first fragile blossoms of lasting change beginning to take root. The scent of burning pine incense curling gently around her, mingling with the faint residue of tea leaves, steeping slowly in ceramic bowls. Outside, the sounds of the city fade into a hush, broken only by the occasional creak of sliding screens or the distant bark of a dog. There in the amber light, the tension in Hana's chest tightens, a heartbeat torn between the familiar comforts of a past left behind and the fragile bonds she's building here in the uncertain present. This week, the weight of displacement presses heavily. Hana's modern mind, trained in clarity, fairness, and progress, conflicts with the layered expectations of feudal Japan, a world defined by rigid hierarchy and unyielding tradition. Yet it is here, amid the hush of lantern-lit rooms and the careful courtesies exchanged beneath flickering light, that she begins to grasp the delicate, often painful negotiation of belonging. The smell of incense and polished wood grounds her as she reflects on her role. Mediator, innovator, outsider slowly becoming part of this unfolding story. Her attempts to introduce workplace equality ripple cautiously through the household, sometimes welcomed as relief, sometimes met with suspicion. Relationships shift, alliances subtly realign, and Hana feels both the thrill of potential and the sting of resistance. She watches, especially, the gestures, the slight hesitations before a word, the careful avoidance or meeting of eyes, the spaces opened or closed by posture and silence. Her skills guide her to foster small acts of trust, emphasizing shared responsibility over enforced rank. This requires patience and humility, a slow weaving of new threads into the fabric of ancient customs. Outside, the crisp night air carries the faint scent of blooming chrysanthemums, a reminder of cycles and endurance. The city holds its breath between past wounds and future hopes, its streets alive with stories, both whispered and shouted. Hana senses how the quiet moments inside Lantern Glow echo larger currents of change waves, poised on the edge of history. As the evening deepens and exhaustion settles softly like dusk itself, Hana contemplates the paradox of her journey. The past, with all its comfort and clarity, beckons with nostalgic pull. Yet the fragile bonds formed in this place, the shared meals, the exchanged smiles, the tentative trust anchor her with newfound purpose. Her breath slows, hands resting lightly on the warm wood beneath the table, attuned to the delicate balance she walks. The weight she carries is both loss and promise. Adaptation is measured not in leaps, but in the gathering of small, steady moments beneath the pale light of a flickering lantern. Drifting from the hearth, her breath is steady but quiet, barely rising in the cool air. As she navigates the tangled pathways of the household, both physical and emotional, the weight of unspoken choices presses upon her, like the grain of the cedar beneath her palms. Firm but unpredictable, this week unfolds amid shifting allegiances and quiet confessions. The labyrinth of love and loyalty weaving itself through everyday motions and stolen glances within Kyoto's samurai estates. Hana's modern understanding of human connection, informed by experience and empathy, meets the intricate protocols of a world where affection and duty often clash beneath layers of decorum and expectation. She senses the subtle tensions, the hesitations before shared tasks, the pauses in conversation heavy with meaning, the guarded expressions fleetingly betraying deeper bonds. Her role as an HR manager, transplanted into this era, means balancing professional reasoning with the delicate art of honoring feelings unspoken yet profoundly felt. Her proposals for fairness ripple beyond workplace dynamics, touching the fragile terrain of personal relationships constrained by rank and tradition. The cedar floor's creaks echo the restless uncertainties she navigates. How to foster trust and respect without disrupting the fragile social order. How to recognize the human beneath the armor of status. Outside, the soft rustle of autumn leaves whispers reminders of change, of cycles ending and beginning, mirroring the uncertain paths chosen within these walls. The household hums with the rhythms of ritual and routine, but beneath that steady beat flows an undercurrent of longing and restraint. Hana observes how small acts a gentle touch, a shared smile, a quietly offered help become acts of courage in a world where vulnerability often risks censure. Her hands brush over polished wood and embroidered silk, feeling the textures of this era's complexities. The softness of fabric against rough cedar becomes a metaphor for her journey. The interplay of gentleness and strength, of tradition and transformation. As evening deepens, fatigue settles lightly in her bones, mingled with resolve. She reflects on the paradox of change, the slow weaving of new patterns through ancient fabric, the delicate navigation of hearts and duties intertwined. In the quiet creak of footsteps and the fading amber glow, Hana recognizes that survival here is as much about choosing where to place her trust and love as it is about guiding structures and policies. The paths she walks are uncertain, but the warmth beneath her touch offers hope for what lies ahead. Filling the quiet evening room with shifting shadows and soft light, Hana breathes in the scent of smoldering pine and freshly steeped tea, comforting and steady amid the muted murmur of voices sharing stories. The texture of the woven tatami beneath her palms grounds her as the slow weaving of shared tailies threads people together, stitch by stitch forming a fragile, growing family across boundaries of rank and custom. In this 30th week, Hana lives in moments where leadership feels less like command and more like connection. Her modern sensibilities rooted in workplace equality and empathy find resonance in the gentle exchanges that illuminate the room. She watches as samurai, servants, and retainers gather around the hearth, their faces softened by flickering light and laughter, bridging gaps unspoken during the day's formalities. These evenings reveal a different world beneath the austere hierarchies, a world where human need and vulnerability surface through stories told in hushed tones and shared smiles. Hana's role evolves, tending to the uncharted territory of relationship building, where trust and belonging grow through the simple act of being heard and seen. The subtle camaraderie kindles resilience, a balm against the lasting scars of recent wars, and the ever-present shadow of epidemics that haunt Kyoto's streets. The season's gentle breeze wafts through open SHJI, carrying plum blossoms' faint fragrance and the distant whisper of river currents, tying these small moments to something larger, enduring. Hana's fingers trace the rough weave of her sleeves as she reflects on the paradox of change in this world. How progress arrives not in grand proclamations, but in the painstaking work of knitting together fractured lives. Her efforts at fairness and shared responsibility ripple through these nights, easing tensions and planting seeds for a more inclusive future. Fatigue softens into a quiet satisfaction, a deep knowing that survival depends on more than structure and order. It requires the courage to let walls fall, to invite others in, and to build slowly a family of unlikely equals as the fire's glow fades and the room settles into peaceful darkness. Hana feels the pulse of belonging thrum quietly beneath her skin, a reminder that love and community, once fragile and hesitant, can become the strongest foundations of all. The heavens rolls a thick, humid air. Outside, the sky darkens unevenly gray, clouds twisting and swelling, as a sudden gust rustles the paper screens, bringing with it the sharp, electric scent of ozone and wet earth. Hana feels the cool draft snake beneath her kimono, raising goosebumps along her arms as the faint smell of incense mingles with the storm's promise. Within this charged atmosphere, hidden truths unravel quietly, but with growing force, shaking the ancient foundations of the samurai household she now calls home. This week unfolds like a tempest not just in weather, but in the swirling currents of secrecy and revelation. As an HR manager displaced by time, Hana finds herself navigating turbulent emotions and shifting loyalties with cautious resolve. Her modern tools observation, mediation, structured communication become crucial in managing the fractures exposed by truths long suppressed. She senses the subtle tremors beneath calm facades, the hurried whispers among retainers, the sideways glances between lords, the tightening grip on familiar rituals as unspoken tensions rise. The rigid hierarchy, once seemingly unassailable, shows cracks as old orders confront the unstoppable tide of change and transparency. Each revelation threatens to undo delicate balances, but also offers the possibility of a more just future. The storm's cadence mirrors the household's unrest, the clash of past privilege with emerging equity, the struggle to integrate new values without shattering tradition. Hana's modern assumptions both illuminate paths forward and complicate her steps. Progress requires patience, resilience, and a willingness to endure discomfort alongside those she leads. The tactile sensations sharpen her focus, the rough texture of tatami beneath bare feet, the sudden snap of thunder invoking a momentary stillness, the electric energy coursing through conversations held just beyond hearing. She records every nuance, adapting her strategies to diffuse conflict and build trust amid uncertainty. Fatigue weighs heavy by day's end, not just physical weariness, but the emotional cost of steering a fragile ship through stormy seas. Hana reflects on the paradox of truth, how it can both liberate and wound, how the unveiling of concealed realities demands courage from giver and receiver alike. As lightning fractures the sky and rain begins its rhythmic descent on the tiled roofs, she breathes deep the mingled scents of wet wood and incense, steadying herself for the long journey ahead. Change arrives neither gently nor swiftly here. It strikes like thunder shaking foundations before settling into enduring light. And in this, Hana understands the price and the hope carried in every crack that opens under the storm's fierce hand. A claw of steel presses unexpectedly against Hana's skin, sharp and unforgiving beneath the layered weight of armor and kimono. The metallic tang rises in the air, mingling with the faint scent of oiled wood and damp moss that clings to the estate's shadowed courtyards. Her breath quickens, a steady pulse of tension threading behind the measured calm of samurai discipline. Around her, flickers of movement, the quiet clink of sword fittings, the rustle of fabric mark, the ever-present weight of identity, fractured here beneath the relentless gaze of tradition. This week, Hana lives the divided self with every measured breath. As a modern HR manager, embedded in the rigid samurai hierarchy of feudal Kyoto, she feels the pressure of contrasting worlds colliding within her reason and ritual, equity and obligation. The cold steel is more than weapon. It is symbol, heritage, and barrier, defining who belongs, who leads, who must yield. Her training in people management sharpens her perception. She watches the subtle shifts in posture, the careful choice of words, the tight interplay of fear and respect that governs this world. She strives to ease tensions where possible, to reframe authority with fairness, knowing full well the cost of challenging long-held identities. Every pragmatic solution carries the risk of fracturing delicate loyalties or igniting hidden resentments. The presence of epidemics and political unrest beyond Kyoto's walls adds urgency to this fragile balance. The samurai's sword symbolizes survival, a promise of protection, and a reminder of violence just beneath the surface. Hana's modern assumptions about collaboration and transparency often collide with a culture where silence and secrecy safeguard honor and life itself. Tactile sensations ground her. The cold steel's icy kiss, the rough texture of tatami beneath her knees, the faint warmth of a slowly dying brazier. Each sensation carries layers of meaning, echoing the complexities she must navigate. Her hands tremble slightly, not from fear alone, but from the burden of reconciling parts of herself estranged by time and custom. Fatigue settles deep, but with it comes a quiet resolve. The fractured identity she carries is both challenge and strength, a living testament to adaptability in an unforgiving world. Hana understands that survival here demands embracing contradiction, blending past and present with care and courage. As twilight fades into night, the cold steel slips away, yet its imprint remains in her thoughts, her actions, her very being, a reminder that true belonging requires negotiating both the shadows and the light of history's weight. The sharpness of bison, brushing the tops of cedar trees and the worn stones beneath her feet. The distant clang of a bell signals the day's start, its hollow toll carrying through still shadows where loss whispers quietly and sacrifice pulses steady as a hidden heartbeat. This week unfolds amid the stark realities woven through feudal life: the cost of loyalty, the weight of duty, and the quiet endurance demanded by survival. Hana moves among the samurai, a state's early risers' faces etched with grief and resolve, bodies tense yet purposeful, as the rituals of mourning and remembrance play out beneath the fragile light. Her modern sensibilities built on ideals of fairness and progress clash with the unyielding expectations that bind this world. Yet she learns to navigate these currents with growing humility. The pulse of sacrifice is palpable. A retainer weakened by loss finds renewed purpose. A lord's silent grief cloaks unspoken fears of instability. Hana's efforts to foster workplace equity ripple through these human stories, underscoring the fragile balance between change and tradition. She applies her skills not only to organize tasks, but to honor the emotional realities that shape reactions and decisions, finding in sorrow a reluctant bond bridging rigid ranks. The scent of damp wood and incense weaves through the estate's narrow corridors, grounding Hana in the tangible textures of this world's solemn rhythm. She watches the subtle exchanges, glances held a moment too long, the careful folding of banners, the measured pacing of footfalls, each bearing echoes of unspoken histories. The recent whispers of epidemics and distant conflicts stir tensions below practiced calm, making every choice precarious. Her breath steadies as she traces these complex patterns, recognizing that adaptation here demands both resolve and compassion. Fatigue settles heavy, worn not just in muscle, but in spirit, pressed by the relentless passage of days, shadowed by death and hope. Hana understands that in this delicate dance of loss and survival, the heart learns resilience by embracing both pain and purpose. As dawn softens into morning light, she feels the persistent echo of sacrifice beneath her skin, a steady reminder that human endurance is carried forward not by denial of loss, but by the slow, faithful weaving of new life from its fragile threads. The silent snowfall muffles each step on the narrow, winding path that leads through Kyoto's outskirts. The world softened into a white hush. Hana feels the cold press gently into the folds of her kimono, the crisp air crisp and biting against her exposed skin. The scent of wet pine and frozen earth fills her lungs, grounding her amid the quiet stillness. Footprints disappear swiftly beneath fresh snow, each imprint fleeting, as if time itself hesitates to mark her passage. With every careful step, she senses the weight of a journey, not just across the frost-covered landscape, but inward, toward the hidden face of herself. This week unfolds with the slow, deliberate pace of discovery and reflection. The rigid structures of samurai society cling tightly. And yet, in these cold, silent moments, Hana feels the stirrings of transformation, both in the world around her and within. Her modern skills as an HR manager, once so precise and assertive, are tempered now by patience and humility. Learning to navigate a culture where every gesture and every silence carries measured meaning, Hana observes the subtle shifts in relationships beneath the stoic veneer of duty. The small acts of kindness exchanged between ranks, the guarded glances hinting at unspoken understanding, the wary trust slowly building in shared labor and quiet moments. The snowfall itself seems to cloak old tensions in gentle white, inviting a fresh start without erasing what came before. Her knowledge of organizational balance and compassion guides her efforts to weave fairness into daily life, balancing respect for tradition with cautious innovation. Yet she is aware that adaptation demands more than strategies. It requires confronting the fractured aspects of identity her own and those around her as history and present collide. Kyoto's ancient temples and gardens lie dormant beneath the snow, mysterious and still. The quiet reverberates, sharpening Hana's senses to the nuances of human connection. She feels how the cold air crystallizes not just the landscape, but the fragile resilience of those bound by duty and hope. As footsteps fade into silence and the new day's pale light touches frozen branches, Hana reflects on the paradox of change, how it must often come softly, covering what's old in a blanket, both protective and obscuring. The journey to one's true self here is a patient unfolding, a balance between holding on and letting go. In this winter world, where every breath forms a fleeting cloud, Hana finds clarity. The path forward is uncertain, cloaked in snow and shadow. But with each step, she moves closer to the steady pulse of belonging and the quiet strength of transformation. And sweat mingling, heavy and unrelenting Beneath the clear blue sky, the clash of wooden swords echoes across uneven ground, each strike sending a jolt through her muscles and nerves. Around her, the samurai trainees move with fierce concentration, faces etched with determination and exhaustion, their breaths ragged. The scent of forest pine and damp earth rising with their exertions. The rough bark of nearby trees brushes against her fingertips as she leans forward, heart pounding in rhythm with the chaotic dance of attack and defense. This week, the rhythms of disciplined combat strip away. All artifice-only raw resilience remains. Hana watches not just the clash of weapons, but the complex choreography of respect, rivalry, and endurance that defines samurai culture. Her modern training as an HR manager sharpens her eye for dynamics unseen, which students falter, who supports whom, how authority shapes behavior in moments of trial. In this fierce testing ground, lessons of leadership and loyalty converge with the physical demands of survival. Her attempts to introduce ideas of workplace fairness show cracks in the armor of tradition. The hierarchies here are as sharp and immutable as the swords swung in training. Yet subtle openings appear smaller fighters, earning respect through skill. Not birth, quiet acts of encouragement that ripple through the ranks. Hana's tools become observation, careful intervention, and empathy, helping to guide fractured spirits toward unity without breaking centuries-old codes. Around her, the world bristles with tension. Beyond Kyoto, battles flare between rival clans, shadows of rebellion and plague threatening to unsettle fragile peace. The day's brutal exercises echo this uncertainty, forging strength in the face of peril. Hana's breath comes steady but fierce, matching the cadence of the fighters, each strike, each block, a pulse of determination against chaos. The rough texture of wood props under her palm, grounding her as fatigue settles into sore muscles and a burning throat. She carries a mixed exhaustion, not just physical, but a weight born from bridging worlds so starkly different. The ancient discipline of samurai battle weaves with her modern ideals, creating a fabric both tense and rich. As evening falls, the scent of smoked fish and cedar smoke drifts across the training grounds, softening the fierce day. Hana reflects on the nature of resilience, how it demands not only strength and endurance, but patience and adaptation. The unyielding clash of wood and spirit here teaches her that survival is a dance of hardness and grace, where every scar deepens character, and every step forward is earned in sweat and respect. She breathes deeply, feeling the aftershocks of the day settle into quiet resolve. The battlefield is more than a site of conflict. It is a place where trust, honor, and change forge a future, however uncertain. And in that, Hana finds her place learning, enduring, and shaping her own path through the fierce, unyielding storm. The moist air fill her lungs, carrying the mingled scents of wet earth, steamed rice, and distant incense. Underneath this veil, the city stirs footsteps echo faintly. The hawkers' calls begin to thread through the dawn, and lanterns dim as the sun edges above the horizon. As light breaks, so too does a subtle shift within Hana. A sense of emergency, changed self, stepping quietly into a world both foreign and becoming familiar. This week unfurls with the slow awakening of both place and spirit. Hana, once a modern HR manager, far removed from this ancient world, finds herself adapting not only her skills, but her identity. The delicate dance of survival within a rigid samurai hierarchy challenges her ideas of fairness and leadership. Yet these early mornings offer moments to reflect, recalibrate, and grow. She notices how the city lives and breathes beneath the seamless blend of artisans preparing their wares, servants moving efficiently through shadowed alleys, samurai stepping with measured purpose. Hana applies her reasoning to this flow, careful to respect traditions, while gently introducing ideas to promote equity and shared responsibility. Within the household's rigid social order, the textures of the awakening city become part of her lessen the rough bark of trees lining the paths, the cool stones slick with dew, the soft rustle of silk as people dress for their day. Each sensation anchors her in the moment as she contemplates the complex human networks sustaining this world. Networks she strives to nurture and improve without unraveling the delicate cultural fabric, the uncertainty outside rumors of unrest, the lasting scars of recent battles, the whisper of disease lingering in the air remind Hana that adaptation is as much about vigilance as it is about empathy. She feels the quiet weight of responsibility grow alongside her tentative belonging, understanding that leadership here is both fragile and formidable. As the sun climbs higher, melting mist into the promise of day, Hana senses the steady pulse of transformation, not sudden, but gradual, like the city's slow awakening. The journey towards selfhood in this world is layered with challenge and discovery, each step forward a weaving of past and present. With the morning's light warming her face, she reflects on the subtle resilience within herself and those she guides, the courage to adapt, the patience to endure, and the hope that even amidst ancient walls, new paths can be found and walked. Amidst the fragile peace that holds the samurai estate together, the air murmurs with the scent of burning pine and moist earth, faint whispers of a world settled but watchful. Around her, darkness folds gently into light, revealing the delicate balance achieved through hard-fought resilience and unspoken agreements. This week carries the weight of such peace earned through sacrifice and vigilance. Hana feels it in every measured breath, every step careful not to disturb the uneasy calm. As an HR manager navigating the strict confines of feudal hierarchy, she sees how the subtle shifts she fosters ripple through relationships that have been shaped by centuries of rigid order and fierce loyalty. The challenge lies not just in introducing fairness, but in maintaining harmony where disruption could unravel all. Her modern skills become tools of delicate influence, fostering shared responsibility without shaking the foundations, encouraging recognition while respecting rank, balancing innovation with tradition. She watches as samurai and servants alike breathe a little easier when tasks are clearer, when acknowledgement reaches those long shadowed by status. These small victories carry the quiet satisfaction of trust built slowly, like the soft expansion of light from a single flame. Outside the walls, the city hums cautiously, whispers of unrest mingle with the steady rhythms of daily life. The Tokugawa hold tight to their peace, but threats linger, as real as the night's chill. Hana senses that this moment is both culmination and beginning. The peace is hard-won, yet fragile, its endurance dependent on every quiet decision and attentive gesture. The tactile sensations around her, the grain of polished wood, the soft rustle of kimono fabric, the flicker of lantern flames anchor her as she reflects on the paradox of this time. Peace demands strength and patience, courage and discretion. It is a path walked cautiously, where every shadow holds history's weight, and every step forward lights the way for those to come. Fatigue settles gently as the night deepens, tempered by the steady hope woven through these whispered exchanges and shared silences. Hana feels the steady pulse beneath the resilient heartbeat of a world balanced delicately between past and future, shadow and light. It is here, in these soft moments, that lasting change begins to take root. The whispered echoes of generations past as it threads through the blooming garden. The air nestles the stories of legacy unspoken, yet ever-present, seeping into the very fabric of this ancient place. This week, Hana feels the weight of inheritance resting quietly alongside her own evolving identity. Her role as a modern HR manager challenges her to reconcile the demands of fairness and progress with the deep-rooted traditions embedded in Kyoto's samurai culture. She watches how the delicate balance of respect, duty, and whispered history shapes every glance, every gesture within the household. The scent of jasmine becomes a calm amidst the ongoing negotiations of change, a reminder of continuity in a world shifting gently yet irrevocably. Her tools, observation, empathy, strategic patience translate into acts of subtle leadership, encouraging those overlooked to step forward, fostering small moments of recognition and nurturing trust where authority once demanded silence. Yet she knows that every step toward workplace equality unfolds within a landscape marked by loyalty and legacy, where progress is measured in the echoes of old names and the careful tending of fragile relationships. The textures around her root her, the smoothness of ceramic against lips, the grain of polished wood beneath fingers, the soft rustle of silk kimono sleeves brushing to Tommy. Each sensation is a thread connecting past and present, a tangible touch point in her journey to belong and to lead. Beyond the walls, Kyoto carries the muted hum of life markets stirring, temple bells tolling, the steady flow of seasons turning, the subtle fragrance in the garden hints at renewal. Even as the weight of history presses steady upon all who live here, Hana reflects on the paradox of legacy, the coexistence of comfort and burden woven tightly through time. As evening deepens and the tea cools, she acknowledges the quiet strength in honoring what was while embracing what must become. In the ambient glow, hearts and hopes intertwine quietly, affirming that change is less a rupture and more a continuum, an unfolding story whispered gently on the breeze, casting long shadows under pale light. The faint scent of wet earth and blooming iris mingles with the lingering trace of incense from yesterday's ceremonies. Gentle whispers thread through the era tapestry of farewells, memories, and quiet hope woven beneath dawn's tentative promise of renewal. This week unfolds like the delicate unfolding of spring, a time marked by both ending and beginning. Hana senses the weight of parting's retainers leaving, bonds tested and frayed as well as the fragile stirrings of new connections shaped by trust and shared purpose. Her modern experience as an HR manager guides her not through grand gestures, but subtle acts of care, listening closely, easing transitions, honoring the complexities of loyalty within a world governed by strict hierarchy and expectation. The rituals of farewell, framed by ancient customs, breathe life into her understanding of human resilience. She watches worn hands adjusting kimono folds with practiced grace, eyes moist beneath composed masks, swords laid carefully aside not as surrender, but as offerings to the passage of time. The balance Hana seeks to cultivate between equity and tradition plays out in these moments, where honor's weight presses equally on those who give and those who receive. Outside, Kyoto stirs gently, the sounds of merchants setting out, whereas mingle with early morning prayers from distant temples. The season's changing breath carries the silent assurance of cycles, life and death, loss and renewal steeped deeply in the land and its people. Hana feels the bittersweet truth coursing through the day. That progress unfolds alongside grief, that healing demands patience as much as courage. Her fingers brush the cool stone of a water basin, grounding her in the tactile reality amid swirling emotion. Fatigue softens, but does not overwhelm, the kind born not of exhaustion alone, but from the steady, often unseen labor of navigating change and connection. As dawn warms toward morning, Hana reflects on the quiet power in shared endings and tentative beginnings. The whispered farewells carry a gentle strength, an acknowledgement that within the fragile fabric of human ties lies the seed of lasting transformation. It is here, beneath the soft light and soft voices, that hope rooted in respect and understanding begins to take its surest hold. Hana breathes in the scent of smoke mingled with the faint sweetness of cedar and old paper, feeling the gentle rise and fall of her own steady breath as she sits beside the fire. The world outside is hushed, as if the very night pauses to witness this momenta farewell to what once was, and a cautious welcome of what might be. Here, in the warmth and silence, a new life begins to take shape, forged not in grand upheaval, but in patient persistence. This week marks the closing of a chapter and the tentative opening of another. Hana feels the weight and release of countless choices, each etched deep into the fabric of her being like the burn marks on well-used charcoal. Her modern skills organization, empathy, conflict resolution have found new purpose within the rigid samurai hierarchy of 1600s Kyoto. But the path has been anything but straightforward. The fires of change have demanded sacrifice and silence, resilience and adaptability in equal measure. She traces the flickering light with her eyes, recalling how fragile and fierce this balance has been. The uneasy peace of the Tokugawa era shades every decision, every social gesture. Hana's efforts to promote fairness and equality have rippled through the household, shifting old loyalties and setting new standards, yet always wrapped delicately in respect for tradition. Each small victory holds the weight of lives lived and lost, the echoes of battles fought far beyond these walls. Outside, the world moves slowly forward, seasons turning as they have for centuries. Within, Hana senses a new rhythm settling a beat, composed of shared tasks, completed with quiet efficiency. Moments of genuine connection across ranks, and decisions made not solely by decree, but through cautious consensus. The texture of her journey is woven from the interplay of power and humility, innovation and reverence. Fatigue rests in her bones, but beneath it blossoms a steadiness born of endurance. She feels the pulse of life renewed, the ember heat beneath the ashes, fragile yet unwavering. The quiet warmth spreads through her, a reminder that transformation is neither sudden nor loud, but unfolds through time, breath by breath, choice by choice, as silence deepens and the embers flicker low. Hana holds close the truth she has come to know, that to forge a new path, one must first embrace the fire and the stillness. And from this fusion, life endures, shapes, and ultimately blooms.